Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. The Mass Casualty Commission proceedings are set to begin tomorrow morning at 9:30, and I did a setup piece just before the weekend detailing some of what I think is going to happen and talking about some of the schedule. And when I did that, I said, well, if anything happens over the weekend that is significant, that I would do a quick video before the proceedings start. And there has been a few issues come up. There was an investigative journalist, Paul Palango, has released his latest piece in Frank magazine dealing with Lisa Banfield. We've learned that one of the commissioners has a book coming out. I want to talk about that. Nick Beaton, one of the family members and one of the key organizers, did a Facebook Live piece on Saturday. I want to talk about that. And then finally this morning in the Chronicle Herald was an opinion piece by Brian Solvay, who's the president of the National Police Federation. So I'll talk about those four things quickly here this morning. So Paul Palango, I've mentioned his name before, is an investigative journalist, done work for Maclean's, National Post, and then now primarily for Frank magazine on this issue. Has a book coming out in April on the mass casualty, and a lot of the work that he's been doing has been excellent. So he did a piece on Miss Banfield, the spouse of the shooter Gabriel Wortman, in which he talks about a couple of her past small claims court claims, one of which was for hair extensions, another was for a diamond ring, a repair job, and there was some issues there. As a litigant seemed to certainly gave an impression of a manipulative figure, so we'll see what that means, if anything. And also detailing and reminding us of some of the inconsistencies in her narrative, where she was claimed through the police interviews to have been assaulted and hid in the woods overnight, yet seemed to have emerged without any visible signs of having spent a night outside in the woods in cold weather. So lots of questions there to be answered. This could be quite big, actually. There's many interests at stake in her victimhood and her narrative, and so we'll find out probably more so in the second week when some of the foundational documents get released, how the commissioners address some of those inconsistencies and some of the details that Paul Palango's been detailing. I spoke with Paul on Saturday evening, and he may have some more things coming out as the commission unfolds, so we'll watch for that. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is one of the commissioners, Kim Stanton, who's a lawyer based out of Toronto, has a book coming out. And this is not insignificant. The name of the book is Reconciling Truths, Reimagining Public Inquiries in Canada. And it'll be for sale through University of British Columbia Press for $90 each. Certainly a big, thick book. This may not be a problem. Certainly, this inquiry I've talked about before is going to be run differently than a traditional inquiry, with some of the restorative concepts, trauma-focused, trauma-informed concepts. So we'll see what that means in practice as the weeks unfold. But what we now know is that one of the three commissioners, Ms. Stanton, has a personal interest at stake. Yes, she wants to do inquiries differently. Yes, well, maybe that is the case, that they should be done differently, and we'll find out over time. But it looks like we'll be getting an innovative inquiry regardless of whether it fits the circumstances. And it will certainly lead to questions if, as things unfold, it looks like, the method they've chosen doesn't quite address the circumstances properly. Will they be unduly tied to that original plan because of Ms. Stanton's personal interest in the matter? So we'll see how that unfolds. Like I say, it's not necessarily a problem, but she certainly now has a personal interest at stake, more so than Any commissioner, of course, would have some personal interest at stake, wanting to run a good inquiry and make conclusions that are logical, make sense, and have an impact. But this goes a step beyond that. Okay, third thing was Nick Beaton did a Facebook Live on Saturday, which certainly expressed and echoed some of the frustrations that have been publicized through Patterson Law Letters, who's representing Mr. Beaton and many of the other families involved. My impression watching Nick Beaton and just the way he expressed his frustrations was that the families are considering actions that they can take. And if the first few weeks of the commission proceedings go poorly, if it looks like they're not going to address some of the hard issues, difficult questions, then the families may be looking at what actions they can take, whether it's threatening to walk out or other political pressure. So we'll see. But that is certainly a dynamic that's at play. I mentioned I'll be watching the commissioner's opening statement. We don't get to hear an opening statement from the parties, which is unusual in inquiries. So, there's certainly some validation, some valid points that Mr. Beaton is making, and so we'll see how that is dealt with by the commission. Finally, the fourth thing that came up over the weekend, actually just this morning, is this op-ed piece in the Chronicle Herald this morning from Brian Solvay, the president of the National Police Federation, and he talks about how the trauma-informed approach that the commission is taking must also apply, in his view, to the RCMP members. So we'll see what that means. Certainly they would have experienced trauma. I saw this in the Desmond inquiry where members, armed forces that go into difficult combat situations experience trauma. Well, it's no different for first responders, police members and others. So there's some questions that'll come up about that, how well prepared they may be, whether there's any training to prepare them mentally for traumatic situations. Certainly we saw in the military context there seemed to be very little, if any, of that attempt to prepare people for the mental trauma that they may experience in the course of their jobs. Now, some will look at this and say, well, that's the police looking to use this as an excuse to not testify, to not be cross-examined, and that sort of thing. So that, again, remains to be seen how this is going to be approached by the police forces, if they really want to get to the bottom of things, or if they're in protection mode themselves. So some questions raised by that, but that was certainly interesting to read that from Mr. Solvay this morning. So those are some things that came up over the weekend. Like I say, I'll be watching closely tomorrow morning, particularly when the commissioners give their opening statements, to see how they deal with some of these things. I've done some interviews recently too with CTV News and others that will be up. If you check the CTV Atlantic website or the CTV National website, there's a piece by the Canadian Press where I made some comments, and also just spoke with CTV News Atlantic, and I think they'll be doing a piece over the Supper Hour News to set up the commission hearings for tomorrow too. So check those out and watch for me on Twitter at AdamRogersNS, and I'll be making some comments as things unfold tomorrow, and then doing more video commentary and blog pieces as the days unfold. So thanks for watching. Hope you found that interesting or enlightening, and we'll talk to you again soon.